Ahoy, ahoy, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Miles. For me, gardening is an ongoing experiment, and every growing season is a new opportunity to push myself and experience something new. Now, when I'm choosing seeds in the winter, like it is right now, I tend to choose oddball plants or interesting plants that I've never grown before. Sometimes it's awesome. Big, beautiful beans. Other times, not so much. These beans are a complete disappointment. One of the most interesting from last year in my garden was the Litchi Tomato, also known as Solanum sisymbriifolium, the Morelle de Balbis, and the Vila-vila. It's a member of the nightshade family, like tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplants, ground cherries, and it looks like a little tomato or a ground cherry. It's even described, the flavor, as kind of a hybrid between a tomato and a cherry. It has a tomato taste, but with a more sweetness. So that all sounded cool to me. The only difference, or well, one of the major differences, is that it's covered in prickles, every inch of it. Nobody's perfect. But I wanted to give it a go, and here's how it went. I started the seeds in March, and they were very strong growers, no problems. I even had a few extra that I could give away. Around my area, most people don't plant out summer crops until after Mother's Day, mid-May, and so I didn't plant mine out until May 18th, along with the peppers and the tomatoes. You can see in the footage that I planted 2, and that's because you need to have at least 2 in order to cross-pollinate. They are like tomatillos in that way, so that's why they are there. And you'll have to understand that in my area last year, we had a really cool and wet spring, and so many of my summer crops were very slow to start, were pale, were a little weak, and were dealing with pests. Not the Litchi Tomato. It had very strong stalks, really deep green foliage. I didn't see a lot of pests. It just kept on growing steadily. The fruit finally started to develop and ripen around August, and that's when I had my first taste. So what does it taste like? See for yourself. So here is the Litchi Tomato. It's very shiny, very, very smooth. Doesn't have much of a smell, but let's see how it tastes. Hold on, that's gross. Hold on, I'm gonna spit it out in my hand. Yeah. Blech. The taste is okay, and that's actually a little bit surprising, but it's all the textures that I really don't like. There are these seeds all through it, and then a very thick skin. You're not getting a lot of that fruitful flavor. But it has a tomato quality, but it's much more sweet. The taste, again, was not bad. It's just the texture that's disgusting. Seeds are difficult to chew. So, not a win. Now, I pride myself on being a nurturing person, but the Litchi Tomato just crossed my limits, and frankly, they were dead to me. I know that's harsh, but I just didn't want to eat them. I didn't want to touch them. I didn't want to do anything to them. So for the rest of the year, I basically just talked trash about it and neglected it.
Litchi tomatoes are terrible, I hate them.
Now, after seeing my behavior, you can probably guess that I probably won't grow this again. And you're probably right. However, a couple interesting facts have come to my attention as I've been learning more about it that make me consider if maybe I would grow it again. 2 in particular. The first is that Litchi Tomato has been successfully used as a trap crop for potato cyst nematodes, which are a pest for potatoes. And while I didn't do any experiment, I did plant the lychee tomato just a few feet from the potatoes, and my potato crop was awesome. So maybe I was a little harsh on the lychee tomato. Maybe I should cut it some slack. The second interesting thing is a story I read about its history. Now, it has been grown in South America by indigenous people for countless generations, but Europeans only learned about it much more recently in the late 1700s. It received its Latin name, Solanum sisymbriifolium, from a specimen collected near Buenos Aires by a French botanist named Philibert Commerson. And the interesting thing is that it was probably not him who actually collected the plant and cataloged it. Commerson was invited to join France's first attempt at a circumnavigation of the globe. And so they all set out in 1766. And the trip was not smooth. Turns out that Commerson was seasick all the time. He had a lot of kind of complex chronic illnesses. His leg was injured in some way. And so he was on board the ship for most of the time, especially when they first arrived in South America. But he had a lot of help, including his assistant, who was introduced to the crew as John Barret. And John Barret did a lot for Commerson. He went collecting the plants and animal specimens in the wild. He helped catalog and organize the collection. He nursed Commerson through his injuries and illnesses, and they also shared a cabin, in the ship. You see, Jean Barret was actually Jean Barret, who met Commerson and started as his housekeeper years prior, and slowly became his herbalist, his nurse, his teacher and student and researcher and companion and probably lover too. And everything that he did, she was kind of running. And so obviously, he can't function without her, and so he couldn't go on the trip unless she came along. But women were not allowed on naval vessels at that time in France. And so she donned a male garb and presented herself as a male assistant, and Commerson and Barret pretended that they did not know each other. Sources kind of disagree about how long this continued, but most sources say that it wasn't really exposed until they got to Tahiti, 2 years into the voyage, 1768. And when they got to Tahiti, the Tahitians kind of quickly realized that Barret was impersonating a male crew member. And so that's when it all spilled out, because it was illegal for her to stay on the ship. She and Commerson disembarked in Mauritius, where they lived together and continued their collection of botanical and animal species. And they did that for several years until Commerson died in 1773. Jean Barret, records show that she got married later that year to a French soldier and returned to France. And with her came this huge botanical collection that contained thousands, 3,000 to 6,000 species, one of which was the lychee tomato, and another of which is the bougainvillea. That's the other famous one from this journey. And when she returned, she completed her circumnavigation of the globe, and she was celebrated as the first woman to do so. Pretty remarkable person. Now, I enjoy a good story, definitely do, but I hate prickles. So I'm still undecided about whether to grow it again. I love potatoes, so who knows? I'm not sure What do you think? Have you grown it? Would you grow it again? And if you're from South America and you know more about the larger history of this plant, please leave a comment, even if you don't write in English. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. If you're feeling generous, check out the fundraising link in the description. And if you are watching this right now, you've watched the whole video, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time and your attention, and I hope you enjoyed it.